Okie dokie, there we go. So thank you very much for joining me today, Laura. It's really nice to see you on the screen.
Yes.
And yeah, do you want to just introduce yourself and who you're cuddling?
So I'm Laura, and this is my first son, Nathan. So he'll be 8 weeks on Wednesday.
Lovely, that's fab. And yeah, well, I guess, do you want to just hop right in and tell us a wee bit about your pregnancy and how your journey's been?
Yeah, so I was pretty sick at the start of my pregnancy, probably for about 3 or 4 months, and then I had a pretty smooth second trimester, and then the third trimester was when everything started to change a bit. So at 36-week appointment, the midwife was saying that I was measuring small. So he had been transverse and head down throughout the pregnancy. So that wasn't a big surprise to me, because I wondered that he might just be facing a different direction. And then I went for a scan to see what way around he was, and he was still transverse. So then we were told that we would either get an induction or a C-section at that point, and we'd have to go back in to see what was going to happen. So then the week after he was head down, he decided to turn around. So then we were booked in for the induction, and we ended up with an emergency C-section in the end after all. Hey, are you interrupting? Hey, do you not like that bit of the story?
He's trying to share his side of the story.
Yes.
So how many weeks were you when you went to the induction?
Sorry.
Hey,
you're okay. There we go. Hey. So I was 37 weeks and 5 days.
Okay. So was the induction there to sort of try and stop him going transverse and changing position, or was there another?
So it was because
I'll pause it now for you. Hang on. Okie dokie. So yeah, was the induction to stop him changing position again, or was there another reason more?
So the induction was booked because he was measuring small.
Oh.
They thought that it would be better to get him out earlier, because they thought that the placenta wasn't transferring the nutrients properly anymore. So that was why they decided to book us in for the induction. But we were given the option at that time of what option to go with. So we thought we'll go with the induction and see. And then if it turns into a section, then that's fine too. It was something that we'd considered along the way.
Yeah, sort of planned for that as well, which is always helpful. And how did you find, sort of with your antenatal appointments, and then of course for going in for your induction, the sort of restrictions that were in place for COVID? Did they feel like they had a big effect, or?
So definitely initially. So we were 12 weeks. Our 12-week scan was the day that the restrictions came in for partners not being allowed to scans anymore. So we got a phone call the night before to say, do you have a fever? Do you have any other symptoms? Are you aware that you have to go in on your own? And I said, no, I wasn't aware of that. So my partner was pretty devastated at that point that he couldn't come to the first scan. So then he never made it to the 20-week one either. And then we didn't have any antenatal groups or anything like that. But I still had my midwife appointments. They continued as normal. And the main other things are probably more so now with COVID, like not having visitors in. But certainly with the pregnancy, it was, just him not being able to be at anything was quite difficult on the run up. But then by the time the 36-week scan came to check what way round he was allowed in at that one, which was good, but there wasn't much to see at that point because he was filling so much space.
I know, quite big at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it must be so hard not having your partner there, definitely.
Yeah.
So okay, and yeah, so obviously you talked about your induction, and then you've told me already that you ended up with having the emergency caesarean. And was that due to the induction not kicking in, or just remind me what we talked about?
So it happened on the Tuesday morning. I went in and got the balloon put in,
Yeah.
and it worked quite well for me. So the contractions started that night, and then the balloon fell out the next morning. But because the labour ward was so busy, unfortunately, I couldn't go down. So I just stayed in the transitional ward bay. So then my husband was able to be there from 9 in the morning till 6 at night. But at 6 at night, I was bleeding. So I had asked if he could stay for them to do a check. So then they did some monitoring, said that everything was fine. We'd been hooked up to the monitor pretty much the whole time that we'd been in, just because he'd been measuring small just to keep an eye on the heartbeat and things. And then, so he was able to stay, and he left at 7. And then at 7:10, I had a bigger bleed, and I was taken down to the observation ward. And that was when they told me that I was at 9.5 centimetres,
Wow.
and that they could see the membrane, but everything around it had come out at that point. So,
Okay.
so then we were taken into the labour ward, and the midwife thought that she felt a hand, so they got the doctor back in to just double check with a scan. So my husband was back at this point. He'd gone home, turned around, come back again. We're about half an hour from the hospital, and then it turned out that it wasn't a hand, it was a foot. So he was breech at this point. So they were going to say they would have the option to turn him or go for a caesarean. But as they were explaining that, my waters broke. So then the options were either deliver him breech with the risk of suffocation because of his size, was the risk factor that they told us, and then the emergency caesarean. And because we'd looked over everything previously, I was quite happy to go ahead with the caesarean, because I thought that would be the safest way to get him here. And he was actually delivered breech at the caesarean just because he was so awkwardly placed
Oh,
at that point. So they did it. That bit was very quick. Like, I remember, so I was offered a debrief, so it was something that I wasn't aware of that was available. But if anyone did have any questions about their labour and things, then it's something that is offered to go through the labour if you want to. So that was I found it useful, and they went through the timing of everything, and between them checking to see if it was a hand or a foot and waters breaking and agreeing to the caesarean was 5 minutes. So that was a quick process. Then all the forms were signed, just to say that we were happy to go ahead with it, and any medical conditions and all these sorts of things. That bit is a wee bit of a blur to me, but my husband fills in the blanks for me. And then he was put into his scrubs, and then I was wheeled through into the surgery theatre, and then got the spinal and the freeze, the spray on the side, just to see how good the anesthetic was working and things. And we'd had all these plans of, I'd made a playlist to go in with me. What I hadn't appreciated was that I should have downloaded that as opposed to have just made it. So because there's no data or Wi-Fi in the theatre, luckily I had a couple of songs downloaded onto it. So he actually came out to our wedding song, which was really nice. So we were pleased with that. So we managed to have that there, and we'd looked into things like lowering the curtain, but neither of us wanted to do that, and we looked into just all the different options that were available to us and decided what ones were important. And I had hoped for delayed cord clamping and skin to skin, so I had the pads placed on my back as opposed to my front. But because of the way he was delivered, he was a bit stunned when he came out, so they took him away. And he also, when they brought him back, I was shaking just with all the different drugs that had been put in, because it was an emergency cesarean. They said that I had a centimetre between his head and my spine. So if he'd gone any lower, he would have had to have been delivered breech anyway. But because they got in there quite quickly, there was I think it was the element that because I'd eaten all day, because I thought that I was going to be going into labour and pushing.
Yeah.
I'd eaten, as opposed to if it had been a elective one, then I wouldn't have eaten anything before I'd gone in. So just because of all the drugs having to counteract that, it had taken a reaction which meant that I was shaking quite a lot when it was coming out of my system, probably mixed a bit with the adrenaline as well. And then he was given to my husband to hold initially, which was nice. And I think although these things were what I had thought would be nice to happen, it didn't ruin the experience in any way. It was just a nice, it was still good the way it panned out.
Yeah. And did your husband manage to do skin to skin, or was he not as keen for that? Or was it not?
I don't think we'd considered it. Like, I've seen pictures afterwards of the husbands doing that, and I thought, oh, what a shame, we should have thought of that at the time, but it wasn't, it just never even crossed our minds that he could have done that at that point in time.
Yeah.
So I think
a bit distracted with everything going on.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's something that I would think is really nice for people to do if they can, if they were in a similar situation.
Absolutely. Oh, it looks so peaceful.
Yeah, he's zonked now.
That was all he needed. Bless him. Oh dear. And so just while we're sort of talking about your husband, how did he find the experience himself? Was he kind of prepared?
I think he was prepared in the sense that we'd done an online hypnobirthing course, but just with no courses being available with COVID. So we'd looked at that online and just had ideas of what we would be expecting when we went in. But I think he was worried for both of us, just because it is quite a big surgery and it's a situation that neither of us have been in before. And because everything changed so quickly, we went from an induction to the labour ward to the surgery all within quite a short period of time. So I think it was just processing all of that and just wanting to know that we were both okay. But he didn't really, at the time, he didn't feel like that, but it was a couple of days later that he thought, like, oh, that was actually quite a lot to happen in such a short space of time.
Yeah, it's quite overwhelming when it's so quick, isn't it? You don't really get a chance to think about it, especially until later, and then it kind of catches up with you. So yeah, that must have been quite challenging for him.
Yeah,
but it's good that you managed to do the hypnobirthing online ahead of time, and that would have hopefully helped a little bit for you as well. So yeah, so after, so you said that Nathan got taken just for a bit of resuscitation, just to get him kind of less stunned, as you say. Was he away for long, or did he come back to you quite quickly?
No, he wasn't away for too long. So we had discussed previously as well that if we'd been in the labour ward, that my husband would have announced the sex, but because we were then in surgery, he didn't want to peek over the curtain. so they they told us that we had a son, which was lovely, and it was a really nice moment when the doctor poked their head over the curtain, but we couldn't hear anything at that point. So, but then he started to cry, so it was only about, I wouldn't say long, maybe a minute or so that he was away for, and then they brought him back through.
Oh, that's good. I'm pleased to hear it.
Yeah.
And I'm always interested because each hospital does it slightly differently. But did you go to like a recovery ward before you went to postnatal, or was it just a recovery room on your own? What was the setup at Ninewells?
So we went into a room afterwards, and we were there for quite a while all the drugs came out of my system. So he was born at 20 to 11 at night, and my husband went home at 4 o'clock in the morning. That was when I was transferred over. So there was time to try and get some breastfeeding established, and I got a bit of skin to skin at that point once the shaking had sort of subsided a bit, and I'd had the liquids put back into my body, and got the hideous compression socks put on. all these all these things, and then my husband dressed him and got him all ready for going up to the ward and things. So it was good, actually. We had to put a lot of that time passed so quickly, for it being probably 5 hours or so by the time I went up to the postnatal ward, and then my husband was then allowed back in visiting hours, which were 9 till 6.
Right, okay. Yeah. So it was good you got quite a lot of time together before he had to go home initially.
Yeah.
That's quite a bit longer than what Tessa was saying in her video. So that's quite nice. Definitely. And I wouldn't imagine he'd have, well, maybe he would have slept really well because he'd have been exhausted when he got home.
Yeah.
That mixture of exhaustion and excitement.
Yeah, I think it was more the drive. The drive home probably would have been quite an odd one. But then, once he was home, it all settled in, and he was just so excited to come back to the hospital the next day. So we were very lucky in that respect, that we did manage to have him there for quite a long period, because there's other people that I know that only had to have their partner for the labour part of it itself, or some that haven't had anyone. So we are grateful that we've landed in a time period that allowed him to be there.
Oh, that's good. It's nice that it's worked out that way. And then how did you find the postnatal ward once you were transferred? Was it busy? And
yeah, very busy. Yeah. It was. There was a lot of people, and I found it a very odd environment in terms of, once one baby starts to cry, all the rest of them start to cry, and I didn't get much sleep, but I got out quite quickly. So that was Wednesday night he was born, and Friday night I went home. I had the option to stay an extra day if I wanted to, but I personally just felt like I would be getting on better at home, just with a bit of peace and quiet, and just to try and get things sorted myself, because everyone's just in such different circumstances next year. Like, some people have small babies, some people have bigger babies, some people are like managing fine, and other people are struggling a bit, and it's just, there's a lot going on all at once, and I just find it quite overwhelming, I think, in that environment.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's and I think it all comes down to the mix of people in your ward as well, and like you say, what's going on with each baby, and then what's going on with each parent as well. So I think that's why they're starting to introduce sort of earlier discharges home for those that are able to, because you do, once you get back to your own bed and your own home, you do feel a little bit more relaxed and able to sleep a little bit better as well. So yeah, I can imagine it be a bit full on, like you say. And for sort of feeding, is it breastfeeding that you're doing?
So I'm mainly expressing. So because he was so little when he came out, he was really struggling to latch. He was really tired, and he had a lot of the mucus, just with it being caesarean. So yeah, he was struggling to latch to begin with. So then I'm still trying just now, and I've had a couple of online consultations. Again, with COVID, I'm not able to go in and see anyone and get them to help in person, but I find that the expressing seems to work quite well for us at the minute, so that's what we're going with just now. And using the nipple shields as well, when we can. So now that he's bigger, I think there's more of a chance of it being established, but if not, then I think I am happy enough just to continue with the expressing if needed.
It's working. That's good. And were you able to get much support on the postnatal ward with feeding then? Was there somebody about to help?
Yeah, there's various different people, and all saying different things. So I think they were all helpful in their own way. There was something that I could take from each of them, but there was the occasional thing that would be contradictory of what someone else had said. So I found that a bit tricky, but that wasn't, that's not a negative against anyone that came in. They were all doing the best that they could at that point in time, but it's, I was struggling with not knowing, having never done it before, and just trying all these different things and trying to see what worked. But there was support there if I needed it, definitely. And there was the midwife button if you needed it for during the night and things too. So
yeah, it's always helpful. That's good. It's good that you had that attention when you needed it, though. That's quite important. So you've already said you were discharged sort of 2 days later, and what's your recovery been like at home? How have you found it?
So the first couple of weeks I struggled a bit with it, just because I'd never had surgery before, and I found that I couldn't even get up and down the stairs easily. So I'd asked the midwife when she came in if I should move downstairs for a while, but she had said that they encourage going up and down the stairs just to try and get a bit of movement and things. So that was good to know, because I think I probably would have just avoided that if she hadn't said that. And then I realised that I drop a lot, so people had to keep on picking stuff up around me because I couldn't bend to pick it up. So that wasn't too convenient, but that I'd never experienced that before, just not being able to bend down to pick something up. And it was at that point that I realised how often I dropped things. And yeah, just slowly building up. So I've been going out for walks every day, and I was getting a bit frustrated at not being able to take the dog out in case she pulled, or if taking the pram out and using all those muscles. But now that he's coming up for 8 weeks, so I am getting to the stage now that I'm out with the pram, and I'm managing to do a lot more now. So I think it's just a case of being patient with it and not expecting too much too early.
Yeah, I think it's so hard, isn't it? Because when I think had this discussion with Tessa as well on her chat, and you forget it's major surgery, and if it was any other surgery you were going in for, you'd be told 6 weeks bed rest and taking it easy. But you just, I think we forget a little bit because we've got a little one to look after.
Yeah.
We forget that we still need to take it easy and be kind to ourselves as well. But yeah, that's good that you're building it up and getting out a bit now, just as the weather's turning nice and wintry.
I know, it's definitely chilly. Getting to that autumn stage.
I know. Oh, bless. I think that's most of the questions that we normally go through. The only other thing I would ask is if you've got any top tips that you would share with other parents for before, during, or after.
I think my main one would be just to look into everything, all your options before you go in. So the likes of the hypnobirthing course was great for the breathing techniques, and I found them invaluable just throughout the whole process. and to know what options were available to me all the way through the pregnancy and the labour, just to make sure that I was asking and that I was happy with the decisions that were being made, because I didn't ever want to feel like I was just being told what to do. I wanted to make sure that I was included in the decision, but that also be prepared for that to change. So although you've looked into it and that you know what your preference would be, that it can shift as well, but you're allowed to ask the questions as to why that's changing, and just to make sure that you're happy with it.
And do you think that has sort of contributed to feeling more positive and calm, the birth, just at knowing what to expect and knowing that you can ask questions and it's your decision?
Yeah, definitely. And also the likes of Bridget's Fierce community, and then that's where I had your video as well, and then that we'd spoken in the comments on that when everything had changed, because I'd forgot to say that my initial hope was to have a midwife-led unit water birth, and then when that 36-week scan happened, that all went completely out the window. And on that day I was really struggling with the change with it, so I just put a post up there just to ask for help from people and just a bit of advice, and that was amazing for me, just to get all the feedback from different people, and just to watch the video that you guys had done again, just to see what all the different choices were, what options were available. And like, I'm really grateful for you just trying to push the caesarean birth aspect of it as opposed to the section, because it is something that's got a wee bit of stigma against it, I feel, with some people. So just to all these things previously, so I think just getting a bit of support on the lead up as well was a huge bonus for me.
Oh, that's good to know, and it's great. I do think that sort of community around you is really beneficial before birth as well as after, because you kind of, especially at the moment, we're all sort of pretty much shut in our houses and not able to link up with people. Like normally you'd be going out to classes and, you know, meeting other parents at the same stage, and you can share stories and like, is this normal? Oh yeah, you're getting that too, that's fine, it's nothing to worry about. And whereas it must be so hard now, which I think why all these online communities are popping up. But I'm glad you found my chat with Bridget helpful. That's really nice to know. And yeah, I definitely want to get rid of that stigma around caesarean birth, because it's just, I can't tell you how many people I've met that just feel like they've not actually given birth if they've had a caesarean birth. And that just makes me really sad, and I want to change that. You know, you've still gone through the whole 9 months, you still had your baby, and you know, it's not, I think it's definitely this perception that it's the easy option, but I don't think it is really at all. You know, there's a lot.
No, I think for me, that the only reason that I was wary of it to begin with was the recovery of the 6 weeks. But I have to say that, like, in this current climate, it's not really made much of a difference, because there's not been as many things to go out and do anyway. And it gave me time to bond with him and just to chill out. And 6 weeks really is such a short period, so I would say for anyone that is worried about the recovery time, it flies past. So it's not as long as you think it is.
Yeah, I can imagine it'll be gone in the blink of an eye when you're just finding your feet as a parent. So
Yeah.
that's really reassuring to share. Thank you. That's fine. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us before we finish up today?
I think that was the main thing. So yeah, just that, like, the caesarean birth is, like, it is a birth, and it's the team that do it, I imagine in every hospital will be sort of similar, but certainly in my instance, I hadn't realised that everyone comes together from different parts of the hospital. Like, I just thought that it would be a caesarean team, like someone was there ready to come in, but they're, a surgeon will come from one part of the hospital, and someone else will come from somewhere else and they'll all join together, and the way they all work together, I couldn't have felt safer. And I just thought it was such a nice experience in terms of just everyone working together and just feeling like they were doing the best for you at that point in time, especially because it all changed so quickly. And I think I'm in the process of writing them a thank you letter. Just especially the anaesthetist was the most calming influence I think I've ever met. So I would yeah, I think that just everyone is in safe hands, and that everyone's wanting the same outcome of keeping the birthing person and the baby as healthy and safe as possible.
That's good. Yeah, I hear that a lot about the anaesthetists. They're very good at keeping everybody calm because they're at your head, so they have good chat usually.
Yeah.
So, well, that's very kind of you for chatting to us today, and I'm delighted Nathan slept through most of it. Bless him.
Yeah, thank you. We got off to a rocky start, but we got there in the end.
We did. So, well, I'll just say thank you again, and I'm going to stop the recording and just now.